So, Frank, I want to do an intro, but before I do, I have to say I did get a lot of feedback from people in the Bay Area who I just want you to know love you and they respect you, and even my brother, who I'm the baby brother. I have two other brothers. I'm the baby brother, so he doesn't really ever acknowledge anything that I do. But he never watches this program, I don't think. But the one thing he said to me a few weeks ago is, "Let me know when you put the Frank Somerville interview up."
Oh,
So
really?
yeah,
Oh, that's kind of him. That's nice. Thank you.
so I'll do my intro here. For decades, my guest today was one of the most recognizable and trusted faces in Bay Area broadcasting, delivering the news into people's homes night after night with professionalism, calm, and credibility. But behind the camera, like so many people, he faced personal struggles that eventually became impossible to ignore. Joining me today is former KTVU news anchor Frank Somerville. Frank, welcome back.
Oh, man, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I do have one question before we talk about your recovery, um,
Mhm.
and that is when I do the. I've always looked at radio work as a hobby, and it's something I love to do. I love interviewing people. I love learning about what they do, their opinions, even if their opinions would be vastly different from mine. I love to interview people and listen to what they're saying.
Mhm.
And I started off, I've always had a 9 to 5 job, but I started off where my radio career was up here. And I was the book reviewer on a nationally syndicated radio show in over 120 markets. And
Wow.
then when I did my own show, I came down to here and I was on 3 AM radio markets with the Bruce Collins show. Now I'm on YouTube, which, has potential. So there's that. But the one thing that always happens to me, and it's probably more so today than back then, was back then I was talking to a microphone. I didn't see the person, I didn't have to talk to them. Now I'm uncharted territory where I'm actually talking one on one to people that I have never met before.
Mhm.
And for me, I'm an introvert. I'm not the type of person that's in the middle of the room at a party or a gathering. I'm usually in the corner. And I know other people who do this. Johnny Carson was an introvert, for example. So it
Mm.
can be done. But I always get those butterflies right before, with Riverside, which is what I use, there's a countdown. I always get those butterflies before it happens, but something happens when I'm doing the intro, which is usually the hardest part because the guest is not interacting at that point. I don't know them. I don't know if AI or my research has told me something untrue about them and I'm introducing them that way. So I
Mhm.
get those butterflies, but something happens when I intro that adrenaline or something kicks in. Did you feel those things when you were doing news?
There was always an excitement before it got started, and once you get started, it almost reminds me of hockey. They say when you're playing hockey, you get nervous, but as soon as you get hit, you're in the game. And it's kind of like that, where once you're started, you don't have time to think anymore because now you're
Right.
just doing. And so the butterflies um, go away. But I think butterflies are natural. I think everyone has them. Football players have them. But once you get started,
Right.
it's that lead up. That lead up can where your mind can play tricks on you. But once you're there, boom, then everything's fine.
Hmm. Exactly. My father, just as a point of disclosure, was an alcoholic. He became a recovering alcoholic, thankfully,
Hmm.
and we actually made peace. He went to prison. There's a whole backstory that we don't have to get into. But I even saw myself, if I'm honest, having addictions. They just weren't as public as, say, yours was. Mine was more eating. I sort of rebelled against the idea of drinking. I don't drink at all. I don't
Hmm.
smoke. I don't do any of that stuff. And for me, though, it was eating. So it's almost, I feel like if there is a if there is something that happens to you, there's a cause and effect, and it can be in different ways. Looking back though on your addiction, was there a defining moment where you can kind of see this is why I went down that path?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've done a lot of thinking about that. And I think what really started was, to me, it's all about self-image. And when what I find is a lot of alcoholics, a lot of people like me have very poor self-images. They don't think highly of themselves. They don't think they belong. They don't think they're worthy, et cetera, et cetera. So when I was in kindergarten, we hatched two chickens. We hatched little baby chickens, and I took two home with me, and those were my pets. And I remember one night my mom was cooking chicken, and I said to my mom, um, I can't eat chicken because we have chickens as pets. We wouldn't eat a dog because we have
Right.
dogs as pets." And my mom said, "Okay." And so between the ages of 5 and 12, I cut out all meat, fish, and poultry, for moral reasons, because I thought if I can't kill it, I can't eat it. Now, that was something I was proud of. I mean, again, this was 58 years ago. Vegetarianism wasn't exactly popular back then.
Right.
And I view that as something good. But I don't ever remember my parents asking me why or saying that they were proud of me. And I think a lot of times about how my life would have been different had I felt positive about being a vegetarian, as opposed to feeling like an outsider, like I was an odd duck, like I didn't fit in with the family, like I was teased in high school for being a vegetarian. And I think that that kind of started um, um, me feeling like I wasn't appreciated for who I felt I was. And 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 then we also grew up in a family where no one talked, no one showed emotion. Um, um, my dad's version of a guy was James Bond. You don't cry. My dad told me over and over I was too sensitive. I mean, I was a very sensitive kid. And I think all of that is what led up to me finding Coke and alcohol and all of a sudden feeling good about myself. And I also have ADD, and ADD and Coke go like that. And then you need alcohol to bring you down. And so for me, the Coke made me feel like I was somebody, at least initially. It made me feel like I could be the life of the party, like I was okay, like I fit in, all of those things. And the problem is that it then just continued to get worse. Now there were spells where I stopped, but
Mhm.
the pattern was it just kept getting worse and worse. But that's, I think, where it started was I had a very negative self-image of myself. And once you have a self-image, it's very difficult to change that. It's very difficult to change your impression, your self-image. And that's what I'm in the process of trying to do right now. And it's not easy. I've spent my whole life putting myself down. And so I actually have to force myself to think positively about things. For
Mhm.
example, I was driving through Berkeley the other day where I grew up, and everything reminded me of something negative. And I thought, this is crazy. There were positive things too. And I had to literally force myself to think about positive things. And that's the kind of thing that I have to do in order to help change my self-perception of myself as some loser drug addict. I'm not that person anymore. But it,
Right.
it takes a while to really believe that. It takes a while to really feel that, and it's a day by day process. That's where the 24 hours comes in. It's a daily process. I have
Mhm.
to work at it every single day. I have to keep that wheel rolling. It's just like with working out. If you stop working out for a week, it's really hard to get back in the gym, right? So you
Right.
keep going every single day. That that's what I need is that kind of discipline, and that's what I'm doing in my life now.
So, not to blame the news, but do you suppose the pressures of the news en- encouraged or it took you down that path partially?
I think I related a lot to stories of sadness and and I didn't know how to deal with that because that was my inner sadness that
Mhm.
was that was I was relating to. And I saw a lot of really tough things. And I think too, I wanted to help. I got into the business to help, and I got so many requests for help, and I couldn't do them all. And I felt after a while like I had a pall of sadness over me, and I'd never used that word ever in my life. But I think, you know, just being around news all day long and thinking about it all day long and not being able to I took the stories home with me. And yeah, after a while that I had trouble dealing with that. That doesn't mean everyone does. It just means I did. And and yeah, that it definitely took a toll. I wish I was one of those who could just read a story and go home and forget about it. But I'm not that type of person. I would go home and I would think about it and think about it, obsess about it. And that's not healthy either.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what I did. I never found a happy medium. And I think I could do that now, but I couldn't back then.
And I'm not sure that it's really true that you would want to be the type of person that could read a tragedy and go home and not worry about it or not think about it.
Sadly, I know there are people who can do that,
Yeah.
and that I could never do that. But again, I went to the opposite extreme. I
Mhm.
took it home and I obsessed about it. And that was my responsibility. I should have been able to find a happy medium, and I couldn't. And
Mhm.
so it caught up with me. It really did um catch up with me to the point where I felt like I needed an escape, and my escape was coke and alcohol.
Mhm. I don't want to spend too much time on the past, but I do have two more questions and then we'll
Sure.
go to the recovery aspect.
hmm
Um, was there ever a point you were on the air and you were drunk? And if that was so, did you realize that people might know? Did you think you were able to, cover that up?
Yeah, I thought I covered it up very well. I was never on the air drunk. What I was is that one time I took two Ambien by
Mm,
accident, and Ambien makes you crazy. And I mean, I couldn't even get out a coherent sentence. That was the time when I appeared drunk on the air. Um, but um, tell me the question again. I'm sorry, I lost train
Did
of
you
thought.
think you were able to
Oh,
cover it up?
yeah, I remember once we were in the sports department, and we were all joking about drugs. And someone said, "Don't ask Frank. He doesn't know anything about drugs." And I thought,
Mm,
I know more about drugs than all of you guys combined. And so I thought I did, but you know what? I know people knew, and it became more and more apparent.
mhm.
And I'm just glad now that the secret's out. Now I don't have to live a secret life.
Right.
I could never enjoy my life. I could never enjoy my job because I knew I had a secret. So when people would come up and say, "Hey, you're great on the air," my first thought was always, "Yeah, but if you only knew."
Mhm,
And and um and that was sad. I had such a great job, and I couldn't fully enjoy it because of my addiction.
mm.
And it also, it affected my family. I couldn't enjoy my family because life with an alcoholic or an addict is really, really hard. And I put my family through hell.
The good news is you have time now, and with my father, there was a good ending to that. He wrote to me before he passed away, and he apologized, and he said, there was things that I did that I'm not proud of, and he made it short. He wasn't the type of person that would gush and apologize, but I could tell he had changed. And so we had a year before he died, and I called him every week and we would communicate. We'd tell each other we loved each other, and we had reconnected. So the good news is there's time, and that's always promising. That's always a good thing. I had a friend who was on my radio show for many times, and I actually was interviewing him while he was an alcoholic and using drugs. And he's a well-known professional wrestler by the name of Jake the Snake Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
And he's recovering now. Thank God.
Yeah, boy,
But
he was in bad shape.
yeah, he was in bad shape, and I would interview him knowing he was in bad shape. But but I always tried to encourage him, and the person that he was living with at the time would always tell me, he does a lot of interviews and people want to bring up the bad stuff. And she said, you always make him smile when he's done with his interview. And thankfully he reached out to a guy named DDP, another wrestler
Right.
who helped who helped him recover. But the thing that he said after he was recovering was he didn't realize the fans loved him because he was so down on himself. He didn't realize there were people that respected him and loved him through the years, because most of the time people wanted to use him and use his story for clicks and views and things like that. So addiction often isolates people emotionally, even when they're surrounded by other people. Did you experience that sense of isolation?
Oh yeah, I always felt like, um, yeah, um, I always felt like I was in a group, but I wasn't in the group.
Yeah,
I was around people, but I wasn't connected, and uh, that was hard. I never felt in the moment. I was always thinking about the next moment, and and that's what I'm trying to do now is live in the moment because I was
yeah,
never in the moment, and that leads to a lot of regrets. I remember a birthday party for my daughter. Uh, you know, I I I just sat across the street watching. I wasn't a part of it, but I was there, but I wasn't a
yeah.
part of it. And I have a lot of stories like that. Those are those are tough where I'm around people, but I'm not with them. Is I guess the best way I would describe it because I didn't know how to let people in. Didn't know how to be in the moment, how to feel. I didn't know how to feel. I was
Mhm.
afraid to feel. And and it's interesting because when I'm around animals and little kids, I'm the exact opposite because they give you unconditional love.
Right. They
And
don't judge you.
no, and I'm so great with them. But with people, uh I'm I'm learning to be in the moment now.
Mhm.
And that that feels so much better than the way it was before.
And I can relate to that because I'm the type when I meet people, I think they're judging me. Sort of, you sort of, and that's that whole being hard on yourself. And that's something people like yourself and myself, it's something we deal with and when we overcome, we work on overcoming that. But the good news is you've reconnected with your daughter and that's wonderful. But
Mhm.
so, okay, you've hit bottom and now we're on the way up. What
Right.
was your first step in the right direction and how did you seek help?
Oh, so well, what happened was, I was drinking 2 quarts of vodka a day, and, I mean, I'll tell you how the alcoholic mind works. So, I was living in a high-rise in downtown Oakland. We'd sold our beautiful house up in the Oakland Hills, and I hated it, and I was living like a frat rat. I mean, no food, no refrigerator, disgusting. And I woke up one morning, I mean, I would just drink from morning to night. Uh, I get a smile on my face every time I see this cup because this cup is filled with the low carb monster drink, not a
Mm,
vodka.
yeah.
And um, I woke up one morning and I
I
realized I
have
didn't have any.
coffee, by the way.
Ah,
I should
okay.
probably clean the cup out once
Yeah,
in a
you
while.
should. That's disgusting.
Can't believe
that's
I
even
showed that.
that's even worse than mine. God. Um, but I woke up and there was no vodka. So I Googled what time does the liquor store open? And it said 6. And so I thought, Well, I can't show up at 6 because if I show up at 6, I'll look like an alcoholic because I'm waiting. Like, where are you? You're 30 minutes, you're 30 seconds late. So I came up with what I thought was the most brilliant idea ever. I'd go at 6:20. And that way I could walk by and go, "Oh, you guys are open? I didn't know that. Wow, I'm going to a party tonight." And the bottom line is I was like this. I couldn't walk. I couldn't balance. And I sat down at a bus stop on the way home and I drank vodka straight and I passed out right on Broadway in downtown Oakland. And the next thing I know, I'm in the hospital with a .4. And my girlfriend tells me that if I want to stay with her, I will go to Duffy's for 75 days. And Duffy's is a rehab center near Calistoga
Hmm.
in the Bay Area. That's about 90 miles north of San Francisco. And that place changed my life. I mean, that's where it all started. And I'll never forget the one moment where it was so crystal clear to me was I was walking down a path. And this was right when I got there, and I was feeling sorry for myself. I thought, God, I've got to I live in this crappy little room in this crappy little place. It's not what I'm used to. And I'm a vegetarian. They don't have good food for me, and I've got to go to these classes all day long. And then I stopped myself, and I started talking to myself out loud, which is what I do when I really want to hear myself. And I said, "Excuse the language. What the fuck is wrong with you? You have an opportunity. This is your opportunity. This may be your only opportunity. And you're feeling sorry for yourself? Who the hell do you think you are? This is your moment. This is your moment to change." And from that moment on, I was all in. I sat front row. I was like a sponge. I sucked up everything. And I stayed there for 75 days. And I can tell you that when I was there, uh, a couple of things changed. First of all, I must have set a record for crying because I had so much emotion packed inside me. And every time I'd talk, I just would start crying. But secondly, I realized what a higher power was. And because I'm not religious, I grew up in Berkeley. I never believed in God. But
Mhm.
someone explained to me that a higher power, because they would say, the higher power could be anything. It could be a doorknob. I thought, what does that mean? A doorknob? How can that doesn't make any sense to me. So someone explained the higher power is the group. That's where you get your power from. It's the group. And Bruce Lee has a great quote where he says, if you have a single matchstick, you can snap it. But if you tie a bunch of matches together, now you can't snap it, right? Because it's got power.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that's the exact same way I look at higher power is my group is my higher power. While I was there, I also I realized that I was a man, that I wasn't my dad's version of a man, that real men cry, that real men show emotions, that I no longer needed to be a slave to my dad's version of a man. And then the real key was after being there for a month, they put you in something called these extended care classes where you do steps 4 and 5. And step 4 is where you look at your assets, you examine your assets, your defects, your resentments, and you go really, really deep. And then step 5 is where you tell them to someone else. And so I went really deep on my fears. I mean, I just was so vulnerable in what I wrote. And I thought I would never stop crying again because I was so emotional. And it's one thing to have it up here. It's another thing to put it on a piece of paper. Now there's a little bit more accountability. But when you share it with a group of about, in this case, 10 people, I'll never forget that moment as I was sharing, saying these most intimate things that I thought I would never, ever tell anyone. And everyone was okay. I was
Mhm.
okay. They were okay with me. And it was as though this huge boulder dropped off my shoulder. And from that moment on, I felt okay. From that moment on, I felt like I don't have any secrets, like I can share my secrets. And that's how I live my life now. I tell pretty much everyone I'm a recovering alcoholic because I want them to know who I really am. I don't want I don't want to meet someone and then 6 months later go, oh, by the way, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I want them to know right off the bat. And if they judge me, that's their problem. It's
Yeah.
not mine. But at least they'll know who I am. Because again, I live 60 years of my life with a huge secret, and I don't do secrets anymore. So Duffy's just really changed my life. And I believe that for people going to rehab, a month is not long enough. At least it wasn't for me. I needed that extra time to kind of build a foundation. And while I was up there too, I started exercising. And I mean, when I first got there, I literally couldn't walk. They had to feed me because I couldn't hold stuff on my fork. And I started lifting, and I've been lifting ever since. And I've completely changed my body now. I look like I belong in a gym, and that makes me feel great. And I'm experiencing what it's like to have if two hands free. I used to always have two hands tied behind my back. I'm amazed that I made it so far with two hands tied behind my back. I mean, I think, God, what could I have done if I had both hands free? And so now I can finally reach what I believe my potential is. And one of those is in the gym. I want to see what I can do with my body. I've always kind of lifted weights, but I've always wanted to see what I can do, what my body's capable of. And I love that. It's a form of meditation for me. I love going to the gym. I also love, uh, uh, I shouldn't say I love feeling because sometimes the feelings are really hard, but I'm accepting feelings now. I'm not looking for a way to numb myself from feelings. Some days we have good days, some days we have bad days. And it's okay. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. If I start crying because I'm sad over my daughter, it's not the end of the world. It just means I'm sad right now. And I'll get over it. And so I'm dealing with things like that. And I also come up with little games for myself because I like doing that where I'm very impatient when I drive. I have a very fast car. And when I'm on the freeway, I look at the freeway as a racetrack. Where can I cut in and cut in? And I'm the kind of guy, quite honestly, who a lot of people would go like that too, because I'm a very aggressive driver. And so just
You're
for the fun of,
ADD.
yes,
That's
exactly.
ADD. I can
Yep,
relate.
exactly. Yes, exactly. So the other day, I was driving from Oakland to Calistoga, back up to Duffy's to say hi, and I drove in the slow lane the whole way just to see if I could do it.
Hmm.
I got passed by a Prius. You know how hard that is to see a Prius go by me.
Yeah.
And then I got stuck behind a truck going 50 in a 65. But you know what happened? I was relaxed.
Mhm.
And I all of a sudden wasn't checking the mirrors, looking, is there a CHP guy? Is there an opening here? I just was relaxed. And so now what I do is I just pick a lane and I just stay in that lane. And 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 so I'm teaching myself new ways of doing things. And I thought that was a fun way of dealing with the fact that I'm impatient. And then the other thing is I'm afraid of heights. So I went skydiving.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah. Have you gone skydiving?
No.
Oh, well, I'll tell you, it's so much fun. And
I bet. Yeah.
I did that because I wanted to commit. I wanted to commit to something and follow through on it. I've committed to a ton of things all my life, but never followed through on. And so in this case, um, I wanted to follow through, and I did. And and it was so awesome. And I was so proud of myself when I landed. And I think that that's how I feel now. I respect myself more. I am proud of myself. I'm okay for the most part with myself. And so as a result, I'm not as needy as I used to be. I don't need people to say they're proud of me because I am.
Mhm.
Before I always needed that. I was always looking for that, looking for approval. I'm not looking for approval anymore. If I get it, that's great. Everyone wants approval. But if I don't, it's okay because I'm okay with me.
Mhm. Yeah. And I want to say if people want to track your journey, they can become your friend on Facebook and you post there quite a bit with videos. And like you said, you're very transparent. So,
Hmm.
speaking of that transparency, is that one of the things you find is that recovering some of your attributes change where you've become honest and there's a humility there?
Um, yeah, I I'm incredibly humble in some of the posts that I make. I believe very strongly that I have an obligation because I have a wider platform than most people, and because I had a job that people are curious about. Doesn't make me better. It just means I have a job that people are curious about. And so I can use that platform to enlighten people about what addiction is like. I mean, what it's really like,
Mhm.
not sugarcoating it, but saying, you know, d- I passed out on in downtown Broadway. I mean, that's pretty humiliating to say that, but that's life. That's real. And I liken it to I was always impressed when Michael Phelps and Simone Biles started talking about mental health, because here you have two of the greatest athletes in the history of athletes talking about how they have mental health. Like, who would have thought? Like, what? You have what? And now by doing that, they've given people license to talk about mental health. And so I like to, in my own smaller way, give people license to talk about addiction, because I think it's really important that we talk about it. I understand the whole anonymity aspect of
Mhm.
Alcoholics Anonymous, but I wish that that there were more examples out there of people who would come forward and say, "I was an alcoholic, and look at me now," and so that the instant image. I think the instant image people have of an alcoholic is a drunk lying in the street, right? It's
Right.
not me. I'm not the
Right.
image that people look at. And so I think it's important that people see images like me as well, so that they realize that you can overcome alcohol, that alcohol hits everyone, and um and that it's okay to talk about it. That it doesn't mean we're horrible people. I love this quote from Matthew Perry where he says, "I've done a lot of bad things, but I'm not a bad person." And I truly believe that. I've done a lot of bad things, but I know in my heart I'm not a bad person. And
Right.
I think alcoholics tend to be some of the most self-aware people, precisely because we go through the steps. I wish my dad and my brother would go through the steps. I think that they would be very beneficial for them too. Um, uh, but I want to. This is my path. I want to be. I want to use my platform to do something good,
Mhm.
and hopefully make a difference. And that's why I keep doing it. And it
I
also, I should be
Go
honest,
ahead.
it also helps with my recovery. And it's neat to have, it's like a video gratitude list or a video
Mhm.
of my life. And I like that.
Mhm. I'm sure you know this, but just a word of caution when you post, publicly, be
Mhm.
aware that there are trolls,
Oh, yeah.
and don't let them affect you because, I've done these episodes and, originally when I was on AM radio, I would also post the episodes to, YouTube. And there was one guy, for some reason, he would listen every week and he would have criticisms. And I
Hmm.
was thinking, why would you waste your time listening to the show if you don't like it? And then
Yeah.
the other thing is, I had a guest recently, now that we're doing video, and he had a large set of teeth, admittedly. So what does somebody write in the comments? Dude has a big set of chompers. That's all you got from an hour show?
Yeah.
Is the guy.
Yeah.
So
You know what?
you go ahead.
What I will do in cases like that is I will actually message them back and go, really? Is that all you got?
Hmm.
I feel sad for you.
Yeah.
Or, uh, 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 you know, uh, I don't get a lot of those because people, I just don't get trolls. I
Hmm.
just don't get a lot of them. And when I do, I face them head on. And and oftentimes what I'll find is, you're right. I probably shouldn't have said that. I was just in a pissed off mood and blah, blah, blah. You're a good guy or something like that. But you're always going to get some people like that. And it's important to remember that you're seeing the forest, not these little individual trees. That
Right.
you're going to
That's
have
true.
some of those individual trees, but keep an eye on the forest.
True, absolutely. Now, let's say someone is watching us and they do have an addiction, they're struggling with it right now. What advice do you have for someone who has an addiction?
Well, the first thing is you have to admit it. The first thing you have to do is say, you know what, I can't do this. I know that I always, and I think I speak for most addicts when I say we think we can do it ourselves, and so we say to ourselves, and I'll just speak in terms of me. I said to myself over and over and over, "This is the last time. Okay, I'm just going to do this one more time. I won't." And then, sure enough, next week you do it again, and at some point you have to go. Obviously, this isn't working, and I believe that you need to realize that you can do it. One of the things that kept me from doing it was I didn't think I could. I just truly didn't. I thought I needed it so badly that there was no way. I saw it as this huge mountain, and I had to climb that mountain and then get to the other side. And I thought, there's no freaking way I can climb that mountain. And what I realize now is I changed the image a little bit. It's a mountain that keeps going. It never ends. But the higher I go on that mountain, the better my view. And I've got a pretty darn good view now. And so what it really is, it's starting at day one. And and that's the whole reason they do the 24 hours. Just make it through 24 hours. Hell, just make it through an hour. But you have to start somewhere. And my thought is if you think you have a problem, then you have a problem. That's
Mhm.
just the bottom line. And my advice would be admit that the first step is admitting it. The first step is saying, I have a problem. And then what am I going to do about it? And my thought is if you can do rehab where you're inpatient, do that. I think that's super important. And there's outpatient, but outpatient I don't think would have worked for me because I'd be in the classes all day long, but at night I could go to the liquor store if I wanted to. I'll tell you one other thing too that I think is super important for someone who really wants to stop. And that is I take something called antabuse. And antabuse is a drug where it makes you throw up
Mhm.
if you drink. And I've tested it and it works. And it's a real ugly throw up that just happens boom like that. And I was having a really rough day, I'll be honest. I was having a really rough day thinking about my two girls and how I hurt them yesterday. And I got as close as I could possibly get to drinking again because I was just hurting so bad. I just wanted the pain to stop. And if not for antabuse, I very well might have, but I knew I couldn't. And so I had to find another way. And so I use antabuse as it's a gun to my head. And I need a gun to my head because I don't have a foundation yet that's strong enough to survive um, when bad things happen or when
Right.
good things happen. I need that gun to my head. And lo and behold, I survived. And I didn't drink. And I haven't had a drink in almost 17 months. I think I'll be 17 months this week. But I remember I was talking to a woman who was asking me about getting help. And I told her about antabuse, and her response, and this told me she wasn't serious. Her response was, I don't want to throw up. And I thought, what kind of a response is that? Then don't
Yeah.
drink. You won't throw up if you don't drink. And it just told me that she wasn't ready. And, people have to be ready. I remember there was this kid once who was at Duffy's with me, and he came back. He was released, and he came back, and he kept calling me and saying he was having problems, and he wanted to get back into Duffy's, and he was all messed up. And I called Duffy's, and I said, "Is there any way you guys could call this guy and get him back in because he really needs it?" And I'll never forget their response. They said, "No, if he wants to come back, he has to call."
Mm.
And so I think that's a super important thing that no one can do it for you. You have to decide. You have to decide how low am I going to go before I get help, before I reach out, or am I just going to die? Because if I hadn't reached out, if I hadn't been forced to reach out, I'm positive I'd be dead now. And I know that I don't have another relapse in me because my last relapse was so bad and my body completely recovered. I mean, my liver's fine, but I don't want to. I'm not going to put it to the test. I don't want to put it to the test because I don't think I'll survive. But basically, I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help. Asking for help is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness. And we are programmed to think that asking for help is weak. Asking for help is not weak. And I one of my biggest regrets is that I never asked for help when I was at Channel 2. And I didn't, in part because main anchors don't ask for help. Just like firefighters don't ask for help, just like vets don't ask for help, just like police officers don't ask for help, just like first responders don't ask for help. It's a sign of weakness. And I no longer see it that way. Now I see it as a real sign of strength. So that was a very long answer to a very simple question, and that is ask for help.
Yeah.
Go out and ask for help.
So now that you're on the road to recovery and it's been what, a year and a half?
Mhm.
So you're 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 on this path. What now is important to you? What really matters to you now that you're looking forward in your life?
That's a great question. You know what matters to me is being a good person. Um, that's really important. That's really important. I always considered myself a really good person when I was younger. That was really important to me, and I strayed from that. So being a good person is super important. But really, the most important thing to me is being able to be a dad to my two girls again, because I wasn't a good dad, and and all I want now is just to be their dad, and
And
hopefully,
they love you, y you had issues, people do, so it's you have today and you are in contact with them, right?
yeah, yeah. It's not as much with my older daughter, but with my younger daughter. But it's just, what's really hard is just the part that is the most difficult for me is just not reliving the past.
Right.
Um, when I get caught up thinking about the past, man, I just go into a rabbit hole. It's really easy.
Mhm.
And I I always try to use the expression, you can look at the past, but don't stare. But
Right.
sometimes things just remind me of the past and I'll just lose it. But I I remember thinking last night when I just wanted the pain to stop. And I remember thinking so clearly, take a deep breath, and alcohol and drugs have never made a problem better.
Right.
And that's true. And so, I passed that test last night with the help of Antabuse. And I know there are going to be more tests. And I welcome each test because each test that I pass makes me stronger. But I want to be remembered now as someone who really struggled, but who in the end became a good person. In the end, went back to the person he was meant to be,
Yeah.
and And I think now I'm living the person I was meant to be, which
Yeah.
is a good person. I liken it to every time I did coke and alcohol, barnacles would attach to my body, and pretty soon I was unrecognizable. And now I'm taking the barnacles off, and the real me is coming out,
Mhm.
and it's pretty badass to see, you know.
Yeah.
And and it's also it's 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 really important for me to not beat myself up for not asking for help until I was 66. This is again the mind of an alcoholic. I could think of myself, yeah, well, I got help at 66, but damn it, I should have done it when I was 46. Shoot. And so all of a sudden I've turned a positive now into a negative.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of thing that I do a lot, as opposed to being grateful that, you know what, I did it at 66. I didn't do it at 48, but I did it at 66. And so I've got all this time left. And so at least I'm doing it now. And looking at the glass as half full, which I'm doing more often now, as opposed to half empty. I saw the glass as half empty for the longest time. And now I'm actually starting to see it half full. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think most people have regrets. That's just inevitable, but you can't let those regrets take hold of your life. One thing that one thing that you say that I like is, "Don't let your dreams die in comfort zones." But
Right.
Jake the Snake also had a saying that was, "My history is not my destiny." And
Ah,
so it's good to always think ahead, not behind. As I heard an old preacher once say, "You can't move forward looking through the rearview mirror," or you could,
yes.
but you'd probably hit somebody. But so so you have a lot of, and I've talked to people, and somebody even posted this in the comments in our last interview was a lot of people want you to do a podcast, myself included. So I hope that you do something like that because there's so many ways you could take that. You could do news analysis.
Hmm.
You could do your story. Um, and you could do different segments. It wouldn't even have to be one set thing. It could be a variety of subjects.
You know what I'd like
Um,
to do is after this interview, not necessarily directly after this interview, but I'd like to talk to you about just on the phone about how you started a podcast because
sure.
that's something I'd like to do.
Yeah.
I'm doing that kind of by doing these minute
Yeah.
long pieces, but the next step would be that, and because I have a lot to say, and I think it's important to I think it's important for people to have good role models, especially when it comes to alcohol and drugs. And
Mhm.
it's one of those things that again we don't talk about it enough, and I think that's a shame because it's something that needs to be discussed. There's my dad. I had a conversation with my dad once about fentanyl, and his response, and this was his honest response, is, "I don't know why they don't just stop." And I said, "Well,
Yeah.
Dad, that's
That's
because they're an
right.
addict."
Hmm.
And but he can't comprehend that. And
Right.
so I'm trying what I view myself as being able to do is not only talk to people who are like me, but also talk to normal people and try and fill them in on the mind, what happens to the mind to 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 get me to do the insane things that I did and to become the insane addict that I was,
Hmm.
so that hopefully they'll have a better understanding, just like with Michael Phelps and Simone Biles.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we'll talk offline. But Frank, this has been excellent, and I hope you enjoyed it.
I
And
love
I
this.
and I hope to have you back soon. And thanks once again.
I'll come back anytime. I
Great.
really enjoy talking like this, and I'll be honest, I was having a rough morning. This made my morning, so thank you. I
Good.
really
Excellent.
appreciate it. And I'll give you a call soon, and we can chat about a podcast.
Yeah. I'll email you my phone number.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Frank.
All right, my friend.